Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar. Hope you are all doing well in Farmington and that Wednesday hump day is so far so good. I'm Patrick Hiester with Minds & Associates BizPsych.
And I'm Dani Kimlinger with BizPsych as well.
So this morning we're going to do the webinar on the respectful workplace and really talk about what some of the elements and the values are in creating and maintaining a respectful workplace. Hopefully we'll share some ideas and some tools with you that will be useful today. As always, two quick introductory notes. We want to encourage all of you to remember about the EAP through Minds & Associates, and just to remember that this is a benefit and a service that's available to all employees and their household members for counseling, for financial advisement, great services, so please take advantage of it. And then secondly, that in the slides today, you'll see BizPsych as our logo, and that we are BizPsych is the organizational development arm of Minds & Associates, so we do training and we do a number of other services that really help in the organizational development of the organization. So respectful workplace is such an important concept these days, as always, but something that employers are paying more and more attention to. You know, it really is, the more I think about this, and I end up doing a lot of harassment training, violence in the workplace, bullying, all those kind of trainings. And really what's important underneath all of that is respect, and that there's really a fundamental value, I think, that all workers and work groups have of wanting to be respected at work. And I can't think of a work situation where respect and being respected is not valued. So I think it's an absolute everywhere. And I'm talking about, you know, I've worked with construction companies, I've worked with maintenance crews, I've worked with nurses and physicians and in business environments. In all those environments, every person, when they come to work, want to be respected. They want to be treated with respect. Here's the problem that we run into with respect, is that we have different definitions of what it means. We have different values about and different sensibilities and sensitivities to what we perceive as respectful behavior. So hopefully we can talk just a little bit about that. We really find that things like productivity, teamwork, morale, job satisfaction are impacted by this sense of whether we're trusted or not, and whether we feel trust and respect in the workplace. So just some basics to start off with, so that you know that where we're coming from and some of our assumptions about what we are considering a respectful work environment. Today we're going to try to do this webinar a little bit more interactively and ask you to actually do some work on your own. And we're just going to trust that you're going to do that to the best of your ability. From our standpoint, a respectful work environment is a place where employees feel valued. And that means that they feel valued by the organization as a whole, and that can even have to do with things like policies and procedures and benefits and pay. All of those kind of things reflect the organization's sense of our value, and that our value is important. It's also valued by our bosses, our leaders, from top leadership to an immediate supervisor. Really important determinant of job satisfaction, the relationship with the supervisor. Do I feel appreciated and valued by that supervisor? And then valued by each other. And if you're a manager or supervisor, do you feel valued by your colleagues and peers and by the people that you supervise? So value is important in a respectful work environment. This next point says that communication is polite, and polite is kind of a relative word. I'd rather say communication is respectful. I hate circular definitions. So what do we mean by polite? In essence, we mean that it's respectful. And here's, again, a funny use of language, because polite is something that we have a certain notion about. And there are definitely different definitions of what communication norms are in different work environments. So if you work on a construction crew, the expectations of communication may be different than they are in an office environment. Whatever that norm is, it can vary from workplace to workplace, and I think that that's okay. I think that's just normal and that's real. No matter what it is, that it is respectful, and that's something to think about. A work environment is respectful if conflict is addressed. So we do not have an expectation or even a hope or desire for a conflict-free work environment. When you have critters that are working together and they're passionate about what they're doing, they're going to bump up against one another. Their passions are going to collide. And so we want there to be healthy conflict, and healthy conflict is conflict that is resolved in a respectful way. So certainly it's not an absence of conflict. And when we look at team development and we think about what is a healthy team actually allows for disagreement and conflict. I think we talked about that in one of our previous webinars, that Patrick Lencioni and his 5 dysfunctions of a team talks about a building block of functionality in a team is trust. People trust each other. And the second level is that there's healthy conflict in the team. And I would agree with that. It's an environment where disrespectful behavior is not accepted. So as I'm saying, we all feel that respect is an important value in the workplace. We also oftentimes avoid or deflect from situations where there's disrespectful behavior. So the healthier an organization is, the more respectful the organization, the more disrespect is not tolerated. And we enter into situations where disrespect is rampant and it's allowed and it's not confronted, and it's problematic if the value is that disrespect can be tolerated. And so again, we have to look at what does that mean. And really, in terms of respect, one thing that's important is that it's not always the big, huge things. It's not a big bonus at the end of the year necessarily, or getting an award, but it's the small day-to-day things and how we treat one another. It's really those small things that are important in terms of respect. So when we are live on site and we do respectful workplace training, we started doing an exercise that we wish that we could do with you, but it's just not feasible in a webinar sort of situation. But what we do is we go around, and I've done this in rooms with as many as 60 people, and we ask people, so what would you consider respectful behavior, and what would you consider not respectful behavior or disrespectful behavior? And when we have those conversations, the value is just immense in people sharing, again, those small things that matter to them. So what we wanted to do, since we're not able to just ask you that question and have you reflect that back, what we want to do is to just kind of share some of the types of things that we hear when we go around the room and ask people what's respectful and what's not.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, a respectful workplace is one where contributions and ideas are acknowledged. So this means when you're sharing your ideas, you feel that they're heard, perhaps validated, and certainly acknowledged by your peers as well as your supervisor and others within the company. Credit and recognition is given where it's due. Now, I'm sure you've never had one of these bosses, but we've worked with many organizations who have had subordinates who feel that their bosses take all the credit for their contribution. So respectful workplace is one where that boss, for instance, would say, you know, thanks for the credit, but it was really Mark that did that work, and they did do well. All are encouraged to succeed. So this means that everybody has the opportunity to succeed, and it's encouraged overtly. Creativity and new ideas are openly invited and truthful as well as direct. So this is an organization that maybe has an open door policy. So creativity is encouraged. If you have a great idea, it's encouraged that you bring it up. If you feel that there's a better way of doing something, it's encouraged that you will openly share that. You let the speaker finish before you begin talking. This is just kind of an interesting piece that I think is often taken for granted. That is that often the speaker, during a conversation, it's easy to, when you have a point that you want to bring up, to kind of cut them off or to interject. It's really important that in a respectful workplace that you see this happening. And then finally, you follow through on your commitments. This is important and not always easy to do. Sometimes other deadlines happen, but if you say that you're going to, if you make a commitment to your colleague or to anyone in your organization, it's good to try your very best to follow through on that.
I'm going to just chime in with a couple others because it's impossible to make a whole list. But some of the really important things that people say when we ask them this question are cleaning up after yourself, clearing your junk out of the refrigerator before it has mold all over it, common courtesy, greetings in the morning, hello, goodbye, when you go by the hallway. All those kind of things are the kinds of things that people bring up, and sometimes it's those small things. But I want to emphasize, sharing resources appropriately and cleaning up your messes comes up every time. I bet that's important to you all as well.
And as Patrick said, those little social graces really go a long way. So then what does a disrespectful workplace look like? Well, hopefully nobody works or has ever worked in a disrespectful workplace. But here are just some key indicators of perhaps a disrespectful workplace that might need a little bit of work. People regularly put each other down, which can be overtly or covertly. So cutting someone off might be an example. One-upping ideas. If someone brings up a good idea, then making a comment such as, "Oh, we've done that before and it didn't work." In a disrespectful workplace, you just can't have a bad day. But interestingly enough, you also can't have a good day. So it's not acceptable to have a bad day, and it's pretty tough to have a good day. You aren't supported for your strengths and talents. So these aren't acknowledged. If you're someone who's constantly meeting deadlines and early to work every day, like in a disrespectful workplace, that won't be acknowledged. You have a fear about voicing your opinion. You're afraid that the risk might be more than it's worth. You don't feel comfortable doing that. You can't address conflicts. So if you know that something is way off track, you do not feel comfortable in a disrespectful workplace voicing that. And finally, disrespect is allowed. As Patrick said, often we do go into these kinds of organizations or we see these problems. Really, that disrespect has been ignored or encouraged and can be very problematic. Now we're going to go ahead and hand this over to Patrick, and he's going to talk about the values of respect.
So I mentioned at the outset that we want to try to make this a little bit interactive. So I hope that you all received the handout. We sent a handout to Valala White, and I'm hoping that she was able to pass that on to you and that you have that in front of you, because in this part of the presentation today, we're going to ask you to take some notes and to pay attention actually to the handout and to do a little bit of interaction. So when we have done this training in the past, we have a set of values card, and these are just kind of standard values that any individual might have. So we want to kind of go through these in terms of how do we determine what's important in creating and enhancing respect in a workplace. And we want you to really be thinking about what you can contribute to your work environment, what might be important values that are priorities to you in terms of values, and values that you can figure out a way to promote. So last week, for those of you that attended, we did a workshop on the QBQ, the question behind the question, which was about personal accountability. So many times when we look at a respectful workplace, our first tendency is to look around and look at other people that need to change their behavior. As we talked about last week, the question I want you to ask yourselves today is what and how. What can I do, and how can I make this city of Farmington, whatever department I'm in, a more respectful workplace? So I'm going to run through these. Hopefully you have them. And as we run through them, I just want you to take any notes that you have. I want you to be thinking about what's important to you and how this value resonates. And then we're going to actually give you a couple minutes to reflect on this. So there's a lot of them, but I think they're all important. So a lot of them have been covered in what we talked about before, but these are the actual values. Is this your value? So the first one, acknowledgement to others. So specifically that you acknowledge others' ideas and their contributions. So how do you appreciate and not just internally acknowledge what others are doing, but how do you openly let other people know that their contributions are worthwhile and valued. Clearly active listening, so you listen fully and completely and without interruption. So Dani talked about interrupting in one of the disrespectful. So people really resist being interrupted. So do we really listen? We're going to talk a little bit later about crucial conversations, fierce conversations, and we just had, Dani just did a workshop for our staff this morning about this, and we really talked about the value of active listening to make sure that you're really hearing what the other's saying, where they're coming from. Important value is time management. So show up to meetings on time, meet deadlines, honor time commitments, honor other people's time commitments. This has to do with emails, meetings, priorities, respecting other people's time. Is that, how important a value is that of yours? A lot of variety in the workplace of people's both ability and value of time management. Responsiveness. So this comes up all the time. People respond to requests for assistance, emails, voicemails in a timely manner in a spirit of willingness. So we're barraged with calls, we're barraged with emails. So an important value is to be responsive and that others perceive us as responsive to their needs, their requests, etc. Direct communication. So we talk about triangulation as the opposite of direct communication. Triangulation is that I go to Dani to complain about my problems with Bill, let's say, instead of going directly to Bill. So people go directly to the source of the complaint rather than go behind their back. I think we've mentioned that one of the services we provide in BizPsych is conflict resolution. And we make agreements when we do a conflict resolution, and 9 times out of 10, one of the agreements is to be direct with one another instead of going to other people with their complaints, because you all know what that creates. So direct communication, really important value. Humor. So the humor, for me, I want to work in a place that's fun, that I can have fun, I can kid around with my coworkers, we can laugh, but that humor is used appropriately and not at the expense of anyone. So we see the disasters of this at times. What are the boundaries? And how important is humor to you all as a value? Integrity, we talked a lot about this last week. So standing up for one's beliefs and morals, exhibiting honesty and sincerity in all situations, and following through on our commitments. Integrity is really walking the talk, being who I propose to be. And how important a value is that for you? Personal accountability, once again, we talked about this a lot last week, but we're willing to be accountable for our behaviors and attitudes as and how they impact the work environment. So are you accountable to what you are commit to, what you say you're going to do, for your behavior, for your impact on others? So this is an interesting one because this is a value that we don't always have control over, but this says balance, that the culture in our environment supports a balance of community, family, recreation, vocational pursuits, so it leaves time for pursuits out of work. So we talk about work-life balance. So do we feel that that the needs and the priorities in our lives are balanced in our work, that we really give to the work, we give our all to the work, and then the work also gives us the flexibility and leeway we have to manage our lives. Now again, this is something that may or may not be something you have control over. Is that an important value? Again, we're putting this out as a question. Power is an interesting one because it's often viewed negatively. So the opportunity to influence others by sharing ideas, suggestions, regardless of title or position in the company. So we hear a lot about the power to communicate up. So we're line workers working in a certain department, and we have great ideas about how to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of what we do. And are our opinions sought? Do we feel we have power over our jobs? And do we have power and influence that can really help the organization be more effective and efficient? At all levels, viewed in the positive sense, power is a really important value. Do I feel power? It's another thing when I think we've talked about doing organizational assessments in the workplace when things are not working well. One of the things people ask for is to be empowered. We have to say, what does that mean to be empowered and to feel empowered in the workplace? Are there healthy relationships? So do we have open interpersonal contact with others throughout the company? Is it friendly? Is it fun? Do people, again, respect one another? Is communication professional? So people converse in a respectful and calm tone. It's really focused on the environment and our goals and what we're doing. We're focused on solutions, not personal attacks. Again, this is more communication, letting the speaker finish before talking. But again, that the communication in the organization is professional. And it's a tricky one because most healthy work environments and respectful work environments allow a certain amount of personal communication as well. But we see it spilling into problems when personal communication is sort of infecting professional communication, and it's breaking down professional communication. So my view is that personal communication is really important. It's important to be able to say, Dani, how was your weekend? And she can share what's comfortable with her without sharing too much or not enough, but that really I can trust Dani that when we need to get to work, that our communication is professional and we're focused on the job. There's the opportunity for creativity in the workplace. So new ideas are invited. People have the opportunity to innovate, create new ideas at all levels in the organization. Again, this really aligns with job satisfaction. Do we feel that we have input and that we can be creative in the work that we do, even if we have a repetitive job, that we have some opportunity for innovation? Do people see themselves as leaders, self-leadership? People are encouraged to take leadership, take responsibility for making suggestions to grow in their position, whatever it is, to help others, provide direction and coaching to others, influence people, and decide courses of action. So do we have, are we all really encouraged to be leaders in the organization? Is there effective problem solving? So this is a high value for some folks, that we're able to constantly look at quality improvement and look at problem solving and decision making, and that we're not looking for attacks and deflecting responsibility, that we're able to solve problems. I really like this one, exhibiting a generous spirit, so giving the others the benefit of the doubt, not making a lot of assumptions, and again, it's interesting, we said this before, giving people permission to have an off day. So in a healthy work environment, there's a certain amount of leeway that everyone's not always going to be 100%. Now we have a responsibility to do our jobs, and so an off day can become problematic, but there is that sort of that flexibility. And are we generous with information, or are we withholding? Do we really go out of our way to help others? That's a generous spirit. Accepting diversity, so really appreciating differences between people, and that can mean ethnic diversity, but it can also mean socioeconomic diversity. It can be religious diversity, political diversity. Right now, there's an issue that's going to be coming up in the next several months. So can we really enhance our work together? And you may have other values. So in your handouts, it has a little space for you to write other values if we've missed them. So that was a lot to give to you, but I hope you took some notes. I hope you were thinking about sort of what's important. So in the spirit of the QBQ and personal accountability, we're going to actually give you maybe 2 minutes of silence to try to rank order these values that we just went through. Maybe pick the top 3 with it in mind of saying, what is most important to me, and at the same time, what and how can I influence and impact this value in the workplace? So we're actually going to give you a couple minutes of silence, and I hope that you have the handouts. And I'm going to ask each one of you to go through this and to really take some notes. And I want you to identify 3 top values. And at the same time, I want you to make some kind of note about how you can, what you personally can do to enhance that value in your workplace for the city of Farmington. So we're going to take just a couple minutes and let you reflect on that, let you hopefully work with your handouts. Great, thanks. So we hope that was enough. We did get a question, so thank you. To go back to the slide, maybe you didn't have the handouts, and I just want you to be aware that those are available to you. And so they have, some of the definitions and some of the things that we're going to talk about coming up. I just kind of quickly, Dani, anything else that you would add around the values?
Sure. When I look at the values, for me, it's hard to pick out three that I find to be the most important and valuable in terms of a respectful workplace. So I think what's true is that, I might be unlike many others, but I feel like the best of all worlds is really a nice combination of all of these. And so, I hope that this was helpful for you to start thinking about in your own workplace.
And to really think about, honestly, what can you do to impact these values? And you could use, again, this information, these handouts, to work together, let's say in your department, about looking at what are our top 3 values. And you could work as a team with determining out of these what are our top 3 values and what are we going to do as a work group to live these values, to have integrity. Very good, thank you, and thanks for writing in that question, because you may not have had the handout right in front of you. So, respect is great. Everything we're saying, it's Disneyland and a wonderful, perfect world. So what happens that actually breaks down respect and respectfulness in the workplace? What can come up? And obviously, it's challenging situations. It's stress. It's people don't all have the same values. So we have a lot of opportunities, again, to collide and for our behavior to start really offending or impacting others in a negative way. And so what we want to do for the rest of this presentation is to try to provide some context and some tools, some actual tools for solving problems of respect or disrespect as they come up, and opportunities. We do a workshop called Dealing with Difficult Situations, and these could be customer situations or it could be situations with one another in the workplace. And so we always share this slide, which I think is just a great saying. So if we think about that respect starts breaking down as we encounter difficult situations with the work, with customers, with each other, with conflict. So it's important to recognize that people's difficult behavior, when we think, oh, this person's being so difficult, it's always determined by their perception. And perception is that person's reality. We've got to understand that, of what they think is important. So, there's some crazy people in the workplace, and they may have really no method to their madness at all, but most of the time, people have some value, some importance that's driving their behavior, and their perception is based on what's important to them, and then how their behavior is interacting with my behavior, which is based on my perceptions. Interesting, in Dani's course this morning where we were talking about crucial conversations, an issue came up with some of our case managers who had a meeting yesterday with an employer, and there were some difficult perceptions both ways that that made this conversation really difficult, and that created all kinds of really difficult feelings. So this was a professional situation, but the perceptions and assumptions that were created really got in the way of the solutions in the conversation. It was a great example of this. So it's important to understand this lens of understanding that things are based on perceptions, and how can we clarify perceptions. So here's where we want to go with this presentation, is that there have been several books now that have been written. One is Crucial Conversations, one is Fierce Conversations. I'm forgetting that there's probably 3 or 4 books now that are all out about conversations in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And so where we want to take you for the rest of this presentation is give you some of the thoughts and material from some of this body of literature that really creates the opportunity for our experience of lack of respect in the workplace. And what can we do to create open, honest communication conversation, which is probably one of the key elements of respect. So again, we utilize at least a couple of these pieces of literature: Crucial Conversations and Fierce Conversations.
Well, crucial conversations, just to give you kind of a high overview, these occur between 2 or more people, and typically they're called crucial conversations because stakes are high, meaning risk could be high, opinions vary, so likely these 2 or more people are not going to be exactly on the same page, and emotions are running strongly, so their passions are high. What I wanted to also do is just talk about some of the situations that might call for a crucial conversation. Now, these are in your slides, and I'm sure you can think of others as well as we go through these, but crucial or fierce conversations become really relevant when confronting other teams and individuals that are constantly letting you down. So let's talk about this for a second. Let's say that you have a member of your team who is constantly missing deadlines and pushing your deadlines way back. You feel like you have absolutely no control over the project you're working on. A crucial conversation might be the next step. How about struggling with your boss's micromanagement style? This is tough, because this is probably a sensitive topic. You know, certainly it's risky, right? Stakes are high. You don't know how they're going to react necessarily. It is your boss. They might have control over your employment. And emotions are probably going to be relevant and prevalent in the conversation. So once again, having good skills in this area can be really helpful so that you can address this. Your colleague accused another of sexism. You recognize that he continually labels others who are not of the same race and gender. Ooh, once again, this is a tough one, very sensitive area. Likely it's bothering you because you feel that this is very inappropriate and you have not only a stake but also differing opinions as well as emotions that this can be hurtful, damaging, or even toxic. Confronting those who behave disrespectfully. So this, I think often when we go into organizations, people who are behaving or acting disrespectfully don't even know they're doing that. So this can certainly, upon confrontation, really look like 2 different situations. They may be very defensive, and to put them on the same page and to effectively get your point across can be really important.
So again, those are examples of, here's where the rubber meets the road in terms of the respectful workplace. So these are the type of situations that we experience disrespect and that feeling of lack of respect. So what we're going to do is to go through some of the principles, and this is specifically from the book by Susan Scott that's called Fierce Conversations, and publicly available if you want to follow up. There's a lot of detail that obviously we're not going to have time to go over. What we're going to do is to share from this book, Fierce Conversations, Susan's 7 principles of engaging in fierce conversation, again, as tools and building blocks for you to think about how do I deal with the opportunity that things might become disrespectful. So we're going to go through these one by one, make some comments. Again, these principles are in your handouts, and it's a pretty short blurb that may not explain it very well. So we're going to flesh it out a little bit, and if you want more information, definitely get this book or contact us, and we can help you out with some of it.
So let's look at Principle 1, master the courage to interrogate realities. So no plan survives its collision with reality. Reality has a habit of shifting at work and at home. Markets and economies change, requiring shifts in strategy. People change and forget to tell each other. Colleagues, customers, spouses, friends, we're all changing all the time. Not only do we neglect to share this with others, but we tend to be really skilled at masking this. So what are some questions that you might be able to ask yourself to challenge this assumption? How about, how many meetings have I sat in where I knew the real issues were not being addressed? How often do I recall members of my team or staff putting their real concerns on the table in an attempt to make the conversation genuine? When was the last time that I said what I really meant or felt? So I thought maybe just kind of painting a sort of an assignment or something to take away from this principle might be helpful. And sometimes just playing it out can really help you take a better grasp on this. So over the next 24 hours, practice describing a reality accurately. This is reality from your perspective. So don't lie blame, and do this at your home or in your workplace. And then ask yourself, are there differences between the official truth or the ground truth in your workplace? How about in your personal relationships or in your life?
Okay, thanks, Dani. Principle 2 from Susan Scott is to come out from behind yourself into the conversation and make it real. So there's a lot to this, actually, but it's really about authenticity and being clear about what we mean. How often do we really avoid what we truly mean, and then we leave a conversation or we leave a situation feeling that we were just not there, not present, not heard, our values weren't respected somehow. So, we have done a lot about assertiveness training. So assertiveness is all about speaking up for your needs and your feelings and your realities and perceptions while respecting others' feelings. So I would think that a lot of this principle has to do with assertiveness, which is really trusting ourselves that our feelings, our intuitions, our needs are valid, and that we can certainly not always meet our needs, but that we can certainly ask that they be met. And so this principle has to do with really entering into the conversation with some authenticity. Another thing that I made an additional note this morning that came up in our training is that what happens when conversations get off track? And we have certain agreements and intentions about what the conversation, the meeting's about, and it's way off track. What can we do to be, authentic and clear about what we need so that we can keep things on track when they need to be? Sometimes conversations, it's good to let them be organic and get off track. Sometimes it's not useful. So again, bringing ourselves to the conversation in an authentic and meaningful and assertive manner. Be assertive.
Thank you, Patrick. Principle 3, be here, prepared to be nowhere else. Now, I just want to start a disclaimer. This is not easy for me. I feel like I'm a good multitasker. But you know what? One thing that really resonated while reading this is that being present in the moment is really important. And sometimes it shows when you're trying to multitask. So how often have you been on a phone call with someone and you can hear them typing in the background? Does that drive you nuts? How about when you're having a conversation with someone in a meeting and you notice they look down to check their email or to send a text message? Now, if you think about how irritating that can be in just a regular meeting or regular conversation, think about a fierce or crucial conversation. So in your handout, you'll see this last sentence right here. It really it helps me a lot. Speak and listen as if this is the most important conversation that you will ever have with this person. It could be. Participate as if it matters, because it does. So what does that mean? So if you treat every interaction that you have as potentially the last conversation that you'll ever have, what are you going to take away from that? Being present in the moment is so important. Now I just want to really quickly go over a few of the common mistakes that could be made during those one-on-ones that can be that can kind of drag you away from that present moment. So doing most of the talking. So if you're doing most of the talking and you're not listening, it's easy to derail, as Patrick was just saying, and detract from what's going on in the conversation. Taking the problem away from someone else. So it's easy to take the problem away from someone else. So if someone asks you for your opinion, and you say, I'll share my thoughts with you before we end our conversation. But right now, let's keep exploring yours. So that's putting the problem back on them, allowing them to explore. Another common mistake is not inquiring about feelings. So for some people, asking how someone's feeling is really unnatural. So saying, are you okay? You seem frustrated in this conversation. Checking it out may not be as comfortable for some as it is for others, but it can really be helpful in this kind of conversation. Delivering unclear messages, unclear coaching, and unclear instructions. So I don't know how many conversations you've had recently where you felt that you didn't know what the purpose of the conversation was, but I've had a few of them. And when you walk away and you're not sure what the message was, you're not sure what the next steps are, and you're not even really sure what the purpose of the conversation was, that can be problematic. So don't leave it for open for interpretation. Close it out. Establish those takeaways. Be overt. Canceling the meeting. This can be a tough one, especially if you feel like there isn't something necessarily to meet about. I think we all have those regular meetings, weekly that could be easy to cancel. I don't know if you've ever walked into a meeting and everyone's just decided, we don't have an agenda this week, so let's just cancel it. Well, that can be problematic as well because they were set for a reason. And if you're canceling the meeting, then that can say more than having the meeting itself. Allowing interruptions. So remember how I said this is a tough one for me? This is probably the peak. So my cell phone is like my sidekick. I have it with me at all times. And when you're having a crucial conversation or a fierce conversation, it's really important to turn off your cell phone because, it's in your pocket and it vibrates and you're in the middle of the conversation. I don't know about you, but I wonder who it is and I wonder what it's about. So it can be distracting and it can be interpreted as rude and it can certainly deflect your attention to take you away from that present moment. Running out of time. Make sure to leave enough time for the conversation or be overt that if you bump into a time constraint that you're going to pick up the conversation and put a timeline on that. Don't just cut off that conversation. All right. We're going to go ahead and go to...
Thank you, Dani. Very insightful. So does that mean that I have permission when we're having a conversation to call attention to perhaps other distractions that may be occurring?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Principle 4. Tackle your toughest challenge today. So this may be a little bit elusive in the meaning of it. So this really has to do almost more with preparing for the conversation. So it's about making sure that you're really clear about what your needs are, what your requests are, what the issue is. So if it's a problem, if it's a challenge in an interaction with a client or with a coworker or with your boss or with a supervisee, so to be really clear about what the issue is and to be objective about it. Then when we prepare for it and where we're going to have the conversation, to be concise, right? You have to give the person an opportunity to respond, and there's only so long that any of us can pay attention to a certain piece of information. So we need to be concise. We need to be real accurate with our information. We need to invite responses. So it's interesting in terms of tackling your toughest challenge today. It does not only refer to identifying with dealing with the things that we need to deal with, but it's how we deal with them, and it's about clarity, about being concise, about being prepared when we have a crucial conversation that we're really clear about what it is. If it's an issue of feeling disrespected by somebody else, we better be really clear about what and how we're going to communicate and what we need. We need to stand firm with it, but we also have to have give and take in the conversation. So really important to tackle our toughest challenges.
Great. And principle 5, obey your instincts. So don't just trust your instincts, obey them. Your radar screen works perfectly. It's the operator who is in question. An intelligence agent is sending you messages every day, all day. Pay attention. Share these thoughts with others. What we label as illusion is the scent of something coming really close. So, I don't know. I mean, if you ever just been in a situation where you feel that your radar is going off, something doesn't feel right, it feels awkward, maybe you're in a dark place and you're on your way to a car and you feel uncomfortable. Your body is telling you something. Your mind is telling you something. So you just have to ask yourself, check it out. Is this right? Is this wrong? So if you're in a conversation with someone and it's a challenging conversation and you feel that, gosh, this conversation is really going off. I can't articulate why, but it just doesn't feel right. Make it overt. So certainly always listen to your internal voice. And you don't necessarily need to know where it's coming from, but the most valuable thing that you can do is to find a way to say that things that can't be said. So no matter what a person says, we decide in the privacy of our own minds what he or she really means by it, and then operate as if the interpretation is really true. So our context determines how we experience the content of our lives. Often our context takes the form of rules to live by. So you might ask yourself, at what point is a room messy? How many minutes make a person really late? So is it 2 minutes? If they're 15 minutes late, does that set that off? Should dogs be allowed to sleep in the bed? Or which are preferable, plastic plants or live plants? So those are just some kind of funny questions to paint this principle.
Very good. Thanks, Dani. Principle 6. I love this saying. So this one is more, I think, immediately intuitive in terms of what it means. Take responsibility for your emotional wake. So be aware of your impact on others and how you say what you're saying. What you don't say. Are you not expressing appreciation for others? Are you not paraphrasing? Are you not conveying that you understand what other people are saying? How do you want to be thought of? What's the legacy that you're going to leave when you think about having left a meeting or having left your workplace? If it's 5 years from now or a year from now or 10 years from now, what do you want people to think of you or to remember or to say about you? What is your legacy? What is the impact that you've left? Your emotional wake. It's a great concept. We want to make sure that we can take the extra load out of our communication. So we've got all kinds of extra things going on with us, opinions and judgments and thoughts and stress and perceptions. And we're not going to be able to lose all of those in our communication. But if we're having a crucial conversation, let's be very mindful of what the impact is on the other, and can I take any of those extra kind of loads out of that? And we know, I think it's just a great word, hopefully intuitive, that a loaded statement is a way of thinking of it. So what's behind the words so that the other person now is trying to interpret beneath what the words are. We want the words to really convey the meaning. We don't want them speculating on innuendo. Can you be as clear as possible and make sure that the spirit of your intention is what's conveyed. So take responsibility for your emotional wake. You can choose your legacy and what you leave behind you. So in so many ways, it's really important in terms of respect.
Principle 7, let silence do the heavy lifting. So how often have you been in a conversation and the silence has felt awkward, especially a conversation such as a crucial conversation or a fierce conversation? Well, I'll speak for myself. I think that I picked the right principle to talk about because silence is certainly is something that I found to be very interesting in a conversation. You know, when you have all the conversation and it's just full of words, it can be really messy. It can, the meaning can get lost because the silence isn't there. The cues aren't there. There needs to be breathing space. So slowing down the conversation, talking about your points, watching the other person's cues. If they look like they want to say something, allow them to do so. Allow insight to occur can really be helpful. So I just want to give you a couple signs that maybe that silence is needed in a conversation. I'm just going to skim over these quickly. So interrupting by talking over someone would be a sign that silence should happen. Formulating your own response while someone else is talking. I think we see this a lot in professional conversations because people simply don't want to sound, they want to sound articulate when they're making their answers or coming up with a rebuttal. Responding too quickly with little or no thought. Attempting to be clever, confident, impressive, charming, and so on. Jumping in with advice before an issue has been clarified. Using a silence or break in the conversation to create a distraction by changing topics. Talking in circles as nothing new has emerged. And finally, just monopolizing that airspace. So those are the 7 principles.
Hopefully that's helpful to you, and you have these in your handouts. You have places for notes. Again, this is all brilliant, wonderful information and only useful insofar as you can take it and apply it to situations that you have. So we wanted to share this in this training on respectful workplace because this may be the ultimate way of creating a respectful workplace. And I think these books and this approach has gotten a lot of attention because it's something that's been missing. And another way we refer to it is the missing conversations. What conversations are missing? Are there gaps? What conversations are you avoiding? And so, again, I think this can be useful to you if you're able to take these principles and figure out a specific situation and how they may be useful to you. No matter how careful and cognizant and respectful we are, we may inadvertently offend other people, or other people might interpret our behavior as not respectful. So here are just a few tips for avoiding misunderstandings. So we want to pay attention to people's reactions. So we really want to be in tune enough with people that we have a sense, if it's not sitting well with them, that we can try to clarify, that we can try to call that attention, or that we check that out once in a while with people. You know, I made this comment, I was kidding, or I was stressed out. Was that okay with you? Did that have any emotional wake impact on you? If you're not sure about a certain topic, or you want to tell a joke, or you're teasing somebody, or there's a religious topic or political, check it out. Ask. Say, you know, here's what my intentions are. Is this something that we can talk about? So to be really clear and overt. Be sensitive to diversity. Just constantly be aware that we're all different. We come from different places. And as much as we can pay attention to that and support and promote it, the better. If we have made a mistake and somebody lets us know that something didn't work for them, that they felt disrespected, just apologize. Don't do it. Be aware of it. Pretty simple. Always provide, you know, and be supportive to one another. And if you yourself get offended, that means take action. That means confront the person directly. If you can't confront the person directly, then you need to go up whatever chain you need to make sure that you're honoring the importance of respect in your workplace. So essentially, we want to model how we want to be treated for others, and that's in our communication and our behavior. internally. This is really the challenge. We want to refrain from making negative judgments when we catch ourselves, calling people names or objectifying others, even in our thoughts. Can we stop that and to ask ourselves, is this the most useful thought that I can have? As you said, value diversity.
So create an accepting climate. Make sure that everybody is known as, considered, and heard. Confront those limitations of stereotyping. Where are the stereotypes absolutely not useful and hurtful? Practice cultural awareness. We do this in our organization kind of in a different way, and that is, if someone goes to another country and spends some time, we encourage them to bring their pictures in and show a slideshow, bring their food. Avoid slang names, ethnic jokes, and sarcasm. Even if they don't offend the person who they're being told to, they can certainly offend others listening. Speak clearly, paraphrase, and pay attention to the choice of your words. Ask about what you don't understand. Don't leave it open-ended. Don't leave it up for interpretation. If you don't understand, ask to clarify. Ask and clarify. Be aware and sensitive to your nonverbals. So if you've got your arms crossed, think about the message that's sending. If you're rolling your eyes, same thing. And then just hopefully in about a minute or two, we can just take a minute and just talk about this email etiquette piece, because I think it comes up so often. So email etiquette is important because, often it's harder to read those nonverbals, to understand the tone of voice, to hear the tone of voice through an email. So be very concise and to the point in your emails. Use short sentences. If someone asks you a series of questions, maybe bullet them and answer every question individually. Try to use proper spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And finally, reread before you send. Reread once, reread twice. And I also just want to add one that's not in there, and that is if the email chain has continued above 3 or 4, and
or 2 or 3,
maybe even 2 or 3, we all have different thresholds, but it might just be better to walk down the hall or pick up the phone. So those are just a few tips for email etiquette.
There are probably about 30 more that we have. We have a whole lengthy handout on email etiquette. But again, this is something that's really valuable to have conversations about in your workplace, since email is such a big part of most of our lives. It's something that touches a lot of buttons, that really impacts people's time in their lives, and respectful and effective email. So it's worth sitting down and having a conversation saying, what are our rules, what are our standards, what are our norms around email etiquette? What do we want to follow in this workplace? And it may be different than another workplace. So email is just so important. So that's our presentation on respectful workplace. Hopefully it was helpful, and again, the notion is that you can take this and find some ways to apply it in a way that you can not only wait for disrespect to happen, but to promote respect in the workplace. So we want to really, once again, thank you for your time today. Hopefully some of these concepts were helpful. Remember us here at Minds & Associates that we're here to support you. And I'm going to go ahead and wind up the presentation. But to give it a minute, if there's any questions or comments, you are more than welcome to type those in, and we'll try to address it, even if it's some wisdom that you have. So thanks very much.
Thank you.